All right, in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Law, I wish to state that on April the 11th, 2014, the notice of this meeting of the Upper Township Committee was posted on the official Township bulletin board, mailed to the Camden County Gazette, the Atlantic City Press, the Ocean City Sentinel Ledger, the Herald Times, and filed with the Township Clerk. Tonight's meeting is being video recorded until the closed session portion of this meeting and will be available on UTTV Channel 97 and on the Upper Township website. I hereby direct that this announcement made a part of the minutes of this meeting. I would ask all rise for the salute of the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Barbara, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Here.
Mr. Coggins?
Here.
Mr. Sarah?
Here.
Mr. Young?
Here. Here.
All members are present.
Okay, I want to welcome all of you this evening. We have a lot to cover this evening, including the budget, and we're happy to see some folks in the audience to join us. So with that, would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes, both the regular and closed session minutes from March 24th?
Motion to approve. Second.
Is there any corrections, deletions, omissions that anyone's aware of? Hearing none. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Corbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Okay. Let's go through the report of the governing body, and that way, in the event that someone would show up for the public hearing, we'll give them a little bit more time. So Barbara, do you have anything for us?
I just have one announcement, and that is I just want to remind everyone that we will be closed this Friday, April 18th, for Good Friday, and if your trash collection falls on a Friday, then you'll put your trash only out for Monday and hold your recycling for the following regular trash day. And that's all I have to say.
Okay. Daniel?
Nothing at this time, but we have 3 contract negotiation matters, a litigation matter, and personnel matters for closed session.
Okay. Barbara, I'll get to you, Paul, on the way back.
I just have one item this evening. We have been asked again by Camden County if we'd like to participate in the Power Co-op, South Jersey Power Co-op for natural gas. We had participated 2 years ago, and we currently have a fixed rate at 30 cents a therm, where the current South Jersey rate we would pay over $1 a therm. We have until the end of the month to say whether we'd like to participate in the Power Co-op or not. I would recommend that we do it. I think we do have some savings. Once we say that we'll participate, we give them all of our information for all of our gas bills, and everything goes out to bid, and then we are obligated at that point once we say we will participate, we are obligated.
So the rate that you originally quoted at 30 cents a therm or something like that, is that the current rate? Is that what we're saying?
70 cents a therm is currently what we're paying in the co-op right now.
Okay.
Where we would normally, if we were not participating in the co-op, we'd be paying over $1 a therm.
Okay. And do we know that if we sign up for this, is it a rate that is fixed?
It
Or
is,
it variable?
for the term, no. Well, actually, there are two, this time, they will be bidding 2 different ways. We can opt for a fixed rate, or we can opt for a rate that would be flexible. So they will be bidding it 2 different ways this time, where last time it was a fixed rate.
Well, I think from a budgetary standpoint, and we can discuss this further if we have interest in doing this. I do know and it's probably a bad comparison, but those that were on a variable rate for electricity in a co-op, a lot of residents saw their electricity bills go through the roof during this cold spell. And so I would be kind of inclined not to go with a fixed rate, even for whatever reason, if some catastrophic thing happened, it could somehow play some kind of variable on, if we were to bid this. But it certainly makes sense to go with a co-op because we certainly save money. I guess the question is, if the committee were to pursue this, what are you looking for? Something?
I think we should do it by resolution, but they give you a time frame, Barb?
What they need to know by the end of this month if we would like to participate, and then they will go out to bid. It will take, our term actually will begin the very end of November. So we're talking 6-7 months away from now before we actually begin this new term, if we decide to go with it.
Do they require a resolution by the end of the month?
There will, no resolution by the end of the month. Once the bids are in and the contract is awarded, that's the time. Probably in the fall is when we would do the resolution.
So we have plenty of time to see what is being offered to us.
I just want you to know that once we commit to participation in it, we are obligated. There's no resolution
I just
needed.
want a motion to that effect
Correct.
today, if that's what you want to do, so at least it's in the minutes that you've understood and decided. In other words, you're committing either the variable or the fixed. I believe you can pick either variable or fixed.
That option will come in the fall, correct?
But whether you participate or not, she's asking for
So
authority tonight.
you need authority now?
Correct.
By the end of the
Do you-
month. You
do
can
you-
wait until the next meeting if you want.
Okay. so
That's correct.
If everybody's comfortable with that, I'll just have Dan draw up a resolution, we can put it as an agenda item.
You don't need
No resolution, just
a
a
motion and a second as to whether you're going to participate or not.
Oh, okay.
And you can do that at this meeting, or you can wait and put it on the agenda to talk about it if you,
Does anybody need to wait longer to think about it? I mean,
Now, I'll make a motion to move on the way with it. Second.
okay, is there any other discussion? Ms. Coleman, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Thank you, that's all I had tonight.
Okay, Paul?
Thank you. Just wanted to give the committee an update on the paving project. The contractors completed all the concrete work and beach repairs, and they're going to anticipate possibly starting paving operations.
Take a peek at the ordinance since you have it.
And I'll keep obviously updates on UTTV and the website.
And is there any other way we're contacting the residents to let them know when?
Yeah, the day before, the contractor is working on a certain road, he hands out letters to residents along that road, letting them know there's going to be work on that road, and, you know, if they need to get their cars out of their driveway, and at what time that they'll be impacted.
Do you think maybe it would be wise to give them more than 24 hours notice?
Well, all the property owners were sent a letter discussing the project, not at a specific time, but letting them know, hey, your street's on the paving project. When they get closer, a contractor will be notifying you when work's going to begin.
Okay.
So that all the property owners on the affected streets have been notified that their street's going to be paved.
All right. Hey, Paul, I had another question. We talked about, a number of weeks ago, I had a complaint from Strathmere with the dune fencing, not holding up to the stanchions. I guess it was put together using plastic wire ties. That's still coming down. I think you were going to try to contact the contractor to see if we could get him to come back.
Well, the contractor didn't use wire tie, I mean, he used staples.
Right, that's right. The staples were coming up. The people have been trying to wire tie it back up.
Yeah. I did notify the contractor back when we discussed last time, he did come out and did some repairs. You know, if there's some additional, pieces that come off, I'll notify the contractor and have them get back out there and address those issues.
Yeah, the guy that had talked to me was away for, I guess, a couple of months, and he just returned from Florida, and said he's back there again.
I'll notify the contractor and get them out there as soon as I can to make the necessary repairs. It's not a problem. The next item I want to give the update to the committee, the direct install program at the community center, they replaced all the lighting in the gym to fluorescent lighting, so that'll be more energy efficient and economical. They're proposing to have the HVAC units hopefully the first week in May. They'll be in. And then the final thing I had was, going back to the beach, the piping clovers are back. We have 2.5 pairs on our beach, and I think there's another pair.
2.5 pairs?
One's still looking for me.
Bird out there is looking for a friend, so.
I was gonna say, either that or Robbie Nest, right?
We have had some erosion on the north end, so their area, they're still up in that same area, working essentially from Winthrop all the way down past, almost to Willard Avenue. So they're all spread out, so our restrictions are in full force for driving and working on the beach. just wanted to give the committee update. And that's all I had for this evening.
Okay. Mr. Coggins,
Well, tonight's going to be the public hearing for our budget, and Mr. Garcia of Ford Scott Associates is going to be here to provide answers to any questions the public has and some guidance. By way of information to the public on another subject, the first quarter expenditures for our zoning board was $17,400, and they heard 6 applications. Our planning board cost us $18,042, and we heard 1 application. So had we combined the zoning and planning board, we could have heard 7 applications with 1 board for $18,000, saving the township $17,400. We may want to revisit our decision on merging those 2 boards.
Is that based on last year's fees, or was it?
That was the first quarter of 2014. So that was January, February, March.
Are the new fees implicated, or are they?
This is net of the fees, this is our cost. In fees, in our fees and our escrow combined, and I don't have a breakout of that, we collected $4,000.
The applications for her, they paid prior to the first of the year when we adopted the new fees.
Well, what we're looking at is the expense side. So the fee side is really irrelevant. I mean,
The fee side offsets the cost.
the fees do offset the cost somewhat, but we still have a spending issue there.
Do we have an idea how many applications we have sitting in the queue right now?
I don't know what we have sitting in the queue.
We have, on the planning board, we have, I know there's 1 application for a workshop this week, and they have 1 on the agenda. And then on the zoning board, there are another 4 scheduled for next month.
okay. Anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Young,
Girls softball was up and running, they had the weekend. I'd like to thank Rich for going down and throwing a wild pitch.
and Ed.
And
They didn't throw a wild pitch.
I was asked to go down, but due to some health issues, I couldn't make it. And they were generous enough to step in for me, so I appreciate it. From what I understand, the opening was a success, and quite a few girls are involved down there this year, so we're going to keep working on that program and trying to get a little better facility. Most of the baseball fields, our existing baseball fields are just about ready. The boys will work on that almost every day, as well as with all the lacrosse fields, soccer fields, and the football field. Amanda's Field right now, I think, looks phenomenal. Once the sun gets out on it, it's going to be a premier park as far as the general appearances of it. So, we had a game there this weekend. At the same time, there were soccer games going on. And received a lot of compliments on the shape of the field and all the fields in that area right now compared to what most places have. We weathered the storms and all the rain quite well down here, so it's a good thing. The only other thing I have is based on 4th of July, something I've been trying to get implemented for this year would be a concert in the park prior to the fireworks. And I wanted to bring it before the committee tonight, at least to get your opinions on it. I have 2 bands right now that are willing to donate their time. One of them was my cousin Kenny's band. He just released his 2nd CD. He goes out on tour with a nice following. Our idea was to have a maybe 4:30 to 8:30 concert, advertise it, and possibly try to maybe talk to somebody, get some of the blow up, jump up things for the kids to come in. And they would play right up to the fireworks. Also, to open up the refreshment stand, and my idea there, and I've talked to a few people, is to open it up with all the recreation groups, baseball, all of them, joining hands in that, and staffing it, supplying it, and whatever money's generated there, it would be split between all the organizations. It's something, last year, we were packed and there's no refreshment stand. So if we can incorporate the refreshment stand as well as a concert in the park, I think we can get some nice people out there early and have more of an old-time family venture that we used to have out there like we had in Tuckahoe. We've had a lot of input on it, and a lot of people really seem like they're interested in getting involved with it. The bands have offered to donate their time. which is a substantial savings to the township. And the only thing we do have to do is we have to bring in a professional sound person because all their equipment, the main equipment is made for in-use. So the cost of that, they reduced it 50%, probably from $1,600 to $800. And I'm in the process of having people donate and sponsor the sound person. So we would also get that done at no cost. So I'm just looking for input whether I should proceed with this. If we're going to do it, I want to get it advertised and get a signboard out there so we can let people know that this is going to be done.
No legal issues, it sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, and then that we'll be covering that because it's our activity.
It's your activity, it's, they're donating their time, there's no bidding issues.
Sounds like a no-brainer.
All it is coordinating, it sounds like most of that's done, so.
I don't know if we need a motion, Tony, I just want to give everybody.
Well, I think authorization for that event on township, because it's coming from the township committee, I think somebody should move.
Before you get the book somewhere else. You need a motion?
Yeah, motion.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Conger?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Other than that, I've been out of commission for the last week and a half or so, back in the saddle again, and in contact with all my guys in recreation to find out where we are and what we need to get done and what has to be done quickly. So I know baseball is a priority, and once we get those fields squared away, then we have to get working on Mander's Field and get that up and running. So that's it.
Well, we're glad you're feeling better, so welcome back. Mr. Ansara, that be you.
Our trash collection is no longer good, except that, and now I think it's time to look into it, the extra truck that we're talking about. I held off on that, not knowing exactly whether we need it or not, and whether or not we should have a side load rear load truck. This time looks like we're doing one more. and
Which
so
kind?
You get a side load truck. However, there's not enough money, correct, for, you have $175,000.
That's correct.
There's also $40,000 in recycling, random.
Approximately $40,000.
There's a couple other things that we get money from. That should be us to where we need to be. The cost of the truck is $255,000. That's about that figure. So,
Is this another articulated vehicle?
Yes.
Now, is there any of the, equipment that we have in the bond that we could maybe do without for a year or two that could help offset the cost so that we
Yes,
can?
Roy Boy's way right now, there's a pickup truck that we do not have to have now. We do need it, but not at this time. So we can take that out of the equation too. And that should give us enough money to, if you maybe, deciding another money, that truck and a couple other things we go, we'll have money.
Did you identify them yet, too? Or you want to reprioritize?
Well, it's out, the person's not here, so I'm going to decide this time. We're working on it.
So, a couple questions I would have, in looking at the operation, I think that the automated trucks are doing quite well out there. I would want to make sure that if we would go as far as approving another automated truck, that there would be a commitment from Public Works that we would have a maximum of 3 trucks operating for trash and recycling on a daily basis. Currently, we continue to use 4 trucks, and we haven't really picked anything up in terms of efficiency going to the newer trucks. So that would be something that I would look at as being a priority, that, we do have that commitment from Roy and Chris, that they are going to be able to get this daily operation done with 3 trucks, 3 heads on the road.
Yeah, and that was the scope of things. The current plan, they say that having the extra truck, it would definitely be done. For us to get use the delivery force, it's on trucks right now, move them, whatever you need to have that truck. For us, the system, it's working, but not as efficient as these other ones.
Yeah, and another thought that I would have, looking at this whole picture, is we've brought, this will be the 4th new equipment that we brought into the public works fleet for trash collection. We started with 7 vehicles before we purchased the new ones. So I would think that at the same time that we would go to make the purchase, we would be able to come up with a list of obsolete equipment that we could put on the disposal list.
Oh, definitely, yeah. That would be nice to.
John, once the summer season gets here, we'll have to have the fourth truck on anyway for Stratford, because you articulated you're not going to be able to operate down there.
Well, we have the 2 smaller ones now, we just have to get in between. And we do have 2 rear-load trucks that are for Stratford area.
So summertime, basically, we probably have 4 or 5 trucks on the road in the street during the all-season.
Because we need the other truck, because without it, it's very pushing it. And sometimes it's difficult to make it without it.
So Barbara, if they were to take out a truck and we were to look at the recycling fees that we have available to us,
We have 175,000 already, and we have 40,000 recycling. Now, we pickup trucks are 25 or so.
I don't know which
And there was
pickup truck
one
is
truck, there was something else that we provided through the state contract. That it's an item that I'm going forward with this, that would give us another, probably $10,000 savings. So I really want to have money here. I just need, we look at it all and, switch things over to get the side of the line, truck.
Well, we wouldn't have to rearrange anything in the bond ordinance,
Okay.
because the bond ordinance already authorizes us to purchase trash trucks. It doesn't specify how many, so we would not need to move anything around in the ordinance. We just need to make sure that we stay within the appropriated amount in that purpose for the trucks and other equipment.
Would be a motion.
You gotta go out to bid. Did you say you wanted to do it on the state contract, if I'm not mistaken? Did you say that?
no.
No.
One of the trucks.
One of the trucks,
You
maybe
need
state
to
contract.
identify what piece of equipment.
Right, so you're gonna have to put it out to bid, and you authorize the purchasing office to do bid specs, but you really shouldn't do that until after the bond is amended. So,
Well, the other thing is that, state contract, I don't know if we have to come up with this. I mean, we already have a trust in place, and we want the same truck.
you have to put it out to bid.
The automated trucks are on state contract?
Should-
The automated trucks are on state
No, that's
contract?
not it. We already have the fleet that we have. I don't want to change something else, get something else in there.
No, we would have
Just use the
to,
same bid requirements as the
You
rest.
have the same bid specs, but another company could come in and underbid what the other one did, and you'll have to take the lowest responsible bidder. What I would suggest is if the bond passes, the amended bond passes, that for the next meeting, we have a resolution authorizing a bid, if that's what you want.
Yes, please. Okay. Did we motion?
You can do it in motion to put it on the next agenda, yes. I move to put a authorization to go to bid on the next agenda.
That's motion.
There a second? Second. I think I already seconded. Is there any other discussion on this? Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Condit?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
That's all I have.
Okay. Mr. Barr?
Sure, well, Mr. Mayor, of course, we're going to be jumping on with Hobie now. We're getting ready to start planning the fireworks, so they're, of course, going to be going hand in hand. Hobie will include you in the committee and come up with what we're going to have for the day's events. Other than that, that's all I have to report.
Okay, could be quite a day between the Strathmere Parade and afternoon concert and a fireworks at night, so a lot of activities in Upper for July 4th. I only have 2 things. One, I did meet with our OEM coordinator and the county OEM coordinator on Friday. We went over our basic plan. Scott's doing, an unbelievable job, bringing all the policies up to date and doing a lot of the paperwork that's required. The county is certainly willing to offer its services and its partnership in any way they possibly can. So I think you'll start seeing some updated policies that he'll be bringing forth to everyone to take a look at. I think as we move forward, there's a few opportunities for Scott to go to some of the conferences that address hurricane preparedness and those kind of things that are upcoming. And, I think, we're on the right track. So that was a great meeting that we had on Friday. And the only other thing that I have to say is that tomorrow I'll be leaving for Chicago. I was picked to serve on a DEA stakeholders meeting on prescription drug abuse and prescribing opportunities to prevent abuse. It really is about 20 people that are meeting in Chicago, representatives from the major corporations, CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, the DEA, the National Board of Pharmacy, the National Board of Medicine, and the National Board of Nursing. And really it's to strategize how to look at the problem that it exists now and how to prevent the drug abuse, prescription drug abuse problem that exists currently. And then on top of it, obviously, to address some of the far-reaching problems that we're seeing now with heroin as well. And what I'd like to do from that point on, I've been talking to Ed, there's a number of consumer websites that are available to help guide family members that are involved with that unfortunate situation. And then there's also the opportunity that the county prosecutor's office, I'm sure many of you have seen, has approved the use of Narcan for emergencies to prevent overdose. And so there's a lot of training that's going to be involved with it, but we're trying to work out, how best to ensure that medication is available. And, in my role, I serve on the Board of Pharmacy for New Jersey as well, and our role there is to try and find ways so that we can supply a dose to a family member that, has that unfortunate situation, so that in the event that something should happen, they would also have the opportunity to utilize this medication. It has an instant reversal, and I think it really behooves us to take on the responsibility to try and educate our residents on how best to deal with that situation, and certainly work with the state troopers and our EMTs. Because, Jay, I don't know if you've been contacted yet, but I know you want the EMTs to do it as well. It'll be the nasal form, so you don't have to worry about administering via injection. So I think it's incredibly important, and we will make sure that the township is prepared and certainly have the doses and the medication we need to prepare for that. So, and that probably will be tied into our OEM budget, because that's somewhere where we usually grab some of those things to do some immunizations and stuff for our staff that's needed. So we'll have to work on the budget a little bit within the budget and find ways to do it. I think each dose is like $25 or something, so we'll figure out some way of doing it. So I'll have more information on this stakeholders meeting I'm attending on Wednesday at the next meeting. So with that, I'll turn it over to Barbara to probably turn it over to Mr. Garcia, and we'll start going through the budget process here.
Okay. Item number 1 on the agenda is the public hearing and final adoption of ordinance number 7, 2014, calendar year 2014. See the municipal budget appropriation.
What this ordinance does is it allows you to go to 3.5% on your appropriation cap. The state is allowing 0.5%, but by ordinance you can go to 3.5%. I want to make it very clear that even though we're authorizing going to 3.5% by adopting this ordinance, this budget is not spending any additional money. It's banking it, which is the second part of the ordinance, which is the most important piece of it. In order to bank your unused spending authority, you have to pass the ordinance. The budget that we're going to have a hearing on tonight is actually $949,000 below the spending cap. So we are not spending any additional money here. We're just authorizing that excess capacity to be banked for 2 years. Our firm, Ford Scott, we recommend to all of our municipal clients that you do this ordinance so that you have the flexibility in the future years to increase an appropriation if some unforeseen emergency or new type of expenditure occurs. Once again, I just want to make it clear that we are not spending the additional 3%, we're just authorizing it to be banked. Now, we would open the hearing to the public for comments, and
Well, before I do that, I just want to make sure there's anybody on the committee that has any questions for Mr. Garcia on this.
How does that tie into the state mandated 2% cap? Or are we talking apples and oranges?
it's similar but different. Currently, Upper Township is not subject to the 2% cap because our tax rate is below 10 cents per hundred of assessed value. Next year, for the first time, we will be subject to that 2% cap. So when you're going through the budget process next year, you'll have the 3.5% cap on spending to deal with. Additionally, you will be subject to the 2% cap. This ordinance doesn't have anything to do with the 2% cap. Currently, we're not subject to, but next year you will be.
Okay, so if there isn't any additional questions, we will open it up to the public. And if anyone would like to address the Township Committee on this particular ordinance, I would ask that you come up and state your name and your address, because you are being recorded, and we need it for the record as well. So would anyone like to address the committee during this public hearing on this particular ordinance? Okay, it doesn't appear that there's any public comment or public willing to come up and address the Township Committee, so at this time I'll close the public portion of this particular ordinance and entertain a motion for adoption. Would someone like to make that motion?
Move the resolution, or move the motion?
Second.
And I would include in that there was no public comment, just in the motion, so that it's apparent. That's okay with you?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 2 on the agenda, a resolution authorizing the Township Committee to adjust the reserve for uncollected taxes by the amount of tax appeal judgments.
In layman's terms, the state requires municipalities to set aside a reserve for uncollected taxes in each year's budget. That's based on the percentage that you've collected in the previous year. For municipalities that have experienced significant tax appeals, the state allows you to adjust that percentage for the effect of those tax appeals. What this resolution is doing is thereby taking advantage of the fact that the state allows an adjustment to the percentage upwards for tax appeals. Had you not, if you choose not to pass this resolution, your reserve for uncollected taxes would have to be about 1% higher, which would be about a penny and a half more on the 2014 tax rate. So this is really is just a formality. The state requires you to do a resolution because you are making the adjustment for the tax appeals, but it's really in the township's best interest to get that adjustment upwards so you can anticipate collecting closer to your 100% for 2014.
Okay? So we need a motion to accept the resolution, right?
Yes.
Motion to accept?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 3, authorizing the reading of the 2014 annual municipal budget by title only.
Mr. Garcia?
This resolution is probably one of the easiest ones you'll ever have to make a decision on. Your budget's over 40 pages long. You have a choice of reading every line item, line by line, dollar by dollar at the hearing, or adopting this resolution to read it by title only.
Okay.
What's the implication?
I should make one thing clear, and it'll state it in the resolution. The caveat of reading it by title is that it has been available in Town Hall since the date of introduction a month ago for review by any interested person. So it's been available to the public in full.
All right, so I'll second that. Is there any other discussion? Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Lucera? Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 4 is the public hearing of the 2014 budget. And I'll read the resolution.
Okay, so before we open it up to the public, again, does anyone on the Township Committee have any questions for Mr. Garcia? Do you have anything to bring forth to us?
Let me give you a brief status of where we're at. This budget is unchanged since introduction on May 10th, so it's the last budget that you've looked at as a group without any changes. It was subject to state review. It's gone through the state review process, and the state has accepted it for adoption tonight, should you choose. Like I mentioned earlier, it's $949,000 below the spending cap, so we're well below the cap. There is the tax rate in this budget will go to 12.4 cents per 100 of assessed value. That's exactly a 3-cent increase from last year. That amounts to $30 per year on $100,000 worth of assessment, or $90 a year on the average assessment in town, which is about $300,000, A couple of quick facts on this budget. The total budget comes in at $12,486,011.20. That is up $765,340 from the previous year. But $407,000 worth of that increase are grant-related. So the grants, as you know, are a wash. There's a revenue offset by an expenditure. So this budget has more grant revenue in it, so therefore we're spending more. So the true increase is $357,521, or just over 3%. The items driving the tax rate this year can really be narrowed down to just a couple of items. First, we have fewer revenue sources from fund balance. We ended the year 2013 with about $289,000 less in fund balance or surplus in our account. So this budget uses $265,000 less of surplus than the previous year's budget. We have less available to use. It makes very good budget sense to then apply a smaller amount. We also have a $750,000 special emergency for the reval program. The state allows that to be paid back over 5 years. So this budget, the 2014 budget, has the first payment towards that of $150,000. So 1/5 of the $750, it's a new piece of spending. We also have about $50,000 more in debt service spending this year, which is directly related to the fact that the township is making the first required payments against bond anticipation notes for the 2011 beach replenishment project. That original project was $3.5 million. We can borrow notes for 3 years, but then we have to begin repaying principal on those notes. For the first 3 years, in 11, 12, and 13, we paid interest only. Now we have to start paying principal and get those paid off in 10 years, max 10 years. Finally, two other items, actually one other item I wanted to mention about this budget. It appropriates about $50,000 less in salaries and wages than the previous year's budget. So, and just to give you, the 2013 budget appropriated $4,412,000 in salaries. This budget has $4,362,000 in salaries, about $50,000 less. In a world where salaries are always going up, obviously to be going the other way, salaries and wages are your biggest piece of your budget. So the fact that you're not increasing that number, just holding it flat would be fine. So we've even got a small decrease in here. I wanted to point those things out, the areas that the increase comes from. Now, if you're ready to open the hearing, or if you have any questions on anything I said, I can answer those now.
I'm fine with that.
We're adopting the budget tonight.
Yes, we
Well, we're assuming you will, yeah. You've been through the process, the New Jersey municipal budget process is first to introduce the budget. That was done back in March. Then there is a 28-day holding period before you can adopt, to give notice to the public. And also in that 28 days, the state reviewed the budget. We're now at the first available date where we could adopt the budget, assuming we have 3 votes to do so.
Question about the 50,000 in debt service. You followed up with a statement saying that starting next year, we begin paying back the principal. What does that do to our budget going forward?
We began this year paying back the principal.
Well, when you say next year, 2014 is the first principal payment.
Okay.
And what it does is our firm, when we help you and assist in your budgets, our primary goal is to give you a capital plan or help you implement a capital plan with debt service repayment that maintains flat and level debt service. Now, here, we're talking about a $50,000 increase, but that's on a $566,000 debt service budget. So even though it is going up, the plan is to make that a smooth number so that no one particular year will have huge spikes. And even though we're increasing $50,000, you have a $12.5 million budget. The $50,000 in itself is almost flat when you look at the budget in total. So the plan is to attempt to make those repayments match up from one year to the next, so there aren't dramatic spikes in debt service from one year to the next.
Well, will this $50,000 remain flat for the next X number of years, or will we see another $50,000 spike as we go into the...
It will increase as other items that you're paying decrease, and the plan is as you pay off other projects, that you pump this one up to get it paid off. The local bond law allows you, when you borrow through bond anticipation notes as opposed to permanent financing, they allow you 10 years to pay it off. So you've got to pay that $3.5 million off over 10 years. So the payments will go up as we get further out, but other capital items that you're repaying will go down, and you'll take advantage of those decreases.
Any other questions for Mr. Garcia? Okay, so at this time, we'll open up, if anyone from the public would like to address the Township Committee on this year's budget. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to view it either here at Township Hall. It's also available on the website. So I'll ask, if someone would like to come up and address the committee, you give us your name and your address before asking the question or your statement.
Ted Kingston, Strathmere. I guess the part that scares me with these budget processes anymore, and this holds true with school board, is this time cap. Because it's kind of like you offer out there like you come to an agreement, but the public really has no assurance that you're going to stick with it. You know, from your point of view, I understand that it's like if you're allowed to hold that in reserve, it's always good to have money in reserve. But from the public's point of view, it's like it's never settled now. You can still spend that money for another 2 years. And so it's kind of like the budget process, even though you're going to vote for it, it's not like the public has a firm figure, because for the next 2 years, you can still go spend that money. And
well, I think, not to interrupt you, Ted, but I think one of the reasons that it's prudent for us to do that is, per example, is what happened with Hurricane Sandy. I mean, we were in a position where we had extended a lot of funds in a short period of time to do a cleanup that really needed a lot of extra work, manpower, overtime hours, and things like that. Now, yes, we got reimbursed for some of that, but we had to front money in order to get that accomplished. So, you know, I mean, there has to be some kind of trust to understand that, we're not looking to change the amount of expenditures from this budget. We're just looking, as it were, for some insurance and hopefully we never have to use it, for an unanticipated, catastrophic situation. If you would ask me in 2012, when we passed that budget, we were going to have, with a crystal ball, that we were going to have Hurricane Sandy, I would have said, no, it's never happened before. And it did. So, and maybe that's never going to happen again, but I think moving forward, we have to take those necessary steps.
It just kind of does leave the door open to the committee coming back. Okay, we're not going to tax you this year, but we're going to get you next year. And the other part of that argument is here, in the overall budget philosophy, that I think might be considered, every week you come and you hear, I'm all for cost savings. The money's got to be saved somewhere. Yet, the committee goes after individual programs. It seems like every week there's a program of the week that you're after, like you brought one up this week again. And yet, while you're going after the 15s, you voted to raise the cap 3.5% again. Like you already voted to raise the cap. So it's kind of on the one hand, you're going after the program, and on the other hand, you're allowing the overall budget to be bigger. We're going against the bond issue again for more money. Maybe a change in philosophy, which I realize it's in a tight economy that these budgets got to be extremely hard to work on. But instead of going after individual programs, maybe the committee would be better served looking at the overall budget. And instead of trying to hammer some specific committee or organization that you don't want to spend money on, to look at the overall budget and let's reduce the overall budget. Maybe if you did a couple % across the board, instead of going at the planning board or this or that or you know what I'm saying?
It's the proverbial drop in the bucket. I mean, you have to start taking the drops wherever you can. Whether it's, a program here or there, it's a drop in the bucket, you have to take it, or you got to try to take a little bit of drop. You can't just let it go.
That's one way of looking at it, but maybe instead of trying to eliminate one group, maybe if everybody took a little bit of the pain across the board.
Well, actually, to be honest with you, I think that's what actually occurred throughout this process. We may look like we're going line by line and saying, well, do we actually need that? But I think for the most part, each department stood up and took off, a reasonable amount of money that would have been normally allocated towards them. And that's how you accomplish the same thing. If you say, we want to stay at 2%, and you start working backwards, you're still going to go through line by line to figure out where you're going to take the money out from anyway.
Yeah.
We just do it the other way around because it just seems more practical to do it that way.
So, the drop in the pockets, whatever you find, you got to take.
I realize it's not easy, and I know from my point of view, each program that comes up, it's like, yeah, that's a worthwhile program, don't cut that. I'm the one bitching the loudest about the tax rate going up, so it's a hard, I realize it's a hard choice.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Now's the time to address us. Well, waiting patiently, doesn't appear that there's anyone else that at this time wants to address the Township Committee on during this budget hearing. So let the record reflect that we had one individual address the Township Committee during the public hearing. And I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion for adoption.
I have a resolution on.
Go ahead, you have to read.
You gotta read it.
Statement.
First,
Okay.
yes. Resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Upper, in the County of Cape May, that the budget hearing before set forth is hereby adopted and shall constitute an appropriation for the purposes stated of the sums therein set forth as appropriation and authorization of the amount of $2,686,849.20, and then I'll call the roll, please.
Okay.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Listening to Mr. Kingston's remarks, I agree with him that you know, every department needs to kind of feel the pain a little bit. And as we went through the budget process, I think that we did go department by department. And we asked everybody to step up, and most of them did. However, what I see is we may have, although we were not going to be able to do this without a tax increase, I feel as though we probably could have squeezed this budget a little bit more. And with that in mind, I'm going to vote no.
Okay, can I just backtrack 1 moment? You made the motion, I didn't get the second, I'm sorry, to move forward.
Does someone like the second on the budget?
Thank you. Okay, the record will reflect that Mr. Coggins is voting no. Mr. Insera?
Based on the same feelings that Mr. Collins expressed, I have to vote on this. Not enough of them.
Okay. Mr. Young?
It's my first budget that I worked on this year, and I think, you know, everyone was fairly frugal with this. The only way we can cut the budget is to cut services to this township, and services are what makes this township run. So it's a no-win situation. Although we like to look at it as a business, we are service-oriented, and we have to supply these services. All the residents in the township are voting yes.
You vote yes. Mayor Plumbo?
Yes, and I will reiterate that not only did we go through this budget with many workshops, and not only did we cut a lot, the expenses that we're faced with and the tax increase is not directly tied to extra expenditures that the departments are utilizing. It's a decrease in the amount of revenue based on tax appeals that took place. It's an increase in insurance policies that we were mandated to provide, and it's also the $150,000 from the tax rebill. So the money that is directly tied to this increase is tied to things that we wouldn't be able to cut in the first place. And so, you know, that's the reason why I'm voting yes to this budget.
With three members voting yes, the budget is adopted.
Thank you, Mike. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. We appreciate you coming here and working with us. You're free to go home. All right, let Paul get back to his place over here, and then we can move on. Okay, let's go with the resolutions.
Okay, item number 5, appointment of Norman W. Briggs to act as special legal counsel.
Second.
Is there any discussion? This memorializes what we had spoke about the last meeting. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr? Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah? Mr. Young? Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 6, authorizing the annual 4th of July fireworks display.
Move the resolution?
Second.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 7, designating the first Thursday in May as a day of prayer in Upper Township, and that day would be Thursday, May 1st.
Move the resolution.
Second.
And just to let the committee know, I've been working with Barbara on this. We've invited a number of the pastors, reverends, priests, depending on your denomination, to come to this day of prayer. We have done this for many years that I recall, at least the past 17 that I've been on the Township Committee, and it really is a time to reflect and realize that this township is really founded on a lot of different religious denominations. There are a number of churches, there are a number of families that participate in services there, and it's appropriate that we have this day of prayer, and we actually have a day and a ceremony to honor and follow what President Reagan put in place many years ago. So would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 8, authorizing the award of a professional services contract with Dr. Stuart C. Farrell of the Coastal Research Center of the Richard Stockton College of New Jersey for the shoreline monitoring and consulting services for beach-related issues.
Move the resolution.
Second. Any discussion? I know we've had Dr. Farrell and Richard Stockton College do this for us. It's part of our requirement to do beach engineering, which allows us to have the ability to have FEMA funds in the event of a, again, storm of magnitude where there's a lot of sand loss. It's also a big focus of what we'll need as we move forward with the Army Corps project that's about to take place in the fall, where no funding no funding from the township will be required for that entire project in the fall. So, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 9, a resolution supporting Assembly Bill A 1021 and Senate Bill S 268, requiring direct payment of energy taxes to municipal government.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Would you call the roll, please, unless there's any discussion? I'm sorry, any discussion? I wouldn't think so, because we want to try and increase this energy. Would you call the roll,
Mr.
please?
Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 10, authorizing the filing of a recycling tonnage grant application.
Move the resolution.
Sounds like there's a first and a second. You want to flip for who's first?
I'll second.
Paul, is this something that's required to move forward?
In order for us to get the rebate from the state for the amount of recycling we do, yes.
All right, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 11, authorizing execution of a contract with Adams, Raymond, and Hagan Associations for professional land surveyor services.
Move the resolution.
Second, and Paul, this is what is required so we can do the tax reval?
For tax, or just for general maintenance of tax map services, revisions.
Okay. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 12, authorizing the mayor and emergency management coordinator to sign the 2014 severe storm plan of the Township of Upper Emergency Operations Plan.
Move the resolution.
Second, is this plan in place already, or?
We have the plan in place. It's being tweaked. Again, that's part of the several meetings that I've been having with Scott Morgan. But this will enable us also to apply for some potential grants and other opportunities with the state as well. So this is an important part of piece that needs to be in place. So all the documents that have been revised will have a folder for all of you at one point for your reading pleasure once we get them all revised and edited and updated. So, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 13, authorizing the disposal of personal property with no market value.
Move the resolution.
Second, and this is just equipment that we can't put out on the website to
Correct.
sell for whatever, right?
It's obsolete.
Okay, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 14, under ordinances, public hearing and final adoption of ordinance number 3, 2014, an ordinance vacating a portion of Mistletoe Avenue adjacent to portions of Block 508 and Block 497 within the Township of Upper in the County of Cape May in the state of New Jersey.
Which one is this, Paul?
This is the one over off of Elmwood Avenue. It's where a property owner had received variances at the zoning board, and one of the recommendations from the zoning board was that there was an unimproved right-of-way next to their property, and by having that area vacated, that would make some of their non-conformities be more conforming with our land use ordinance.
And then be deed restricted into the property.
It would become part of their property, would not increase their size of the property that they could further subdivide, and the township has no purpose for that area or right-of-way.
Puts it back on the tax records.
Yes, it does.
Okay?
Needs to be open to the public.
Yep, I know. About ready to do that. So is anyone in the audience here to address the ordinance that addresses a portion of Mistletoe Avenue adjacent to Block 508 and Block 497? Okay. It doesn't appear there's any public comment, so at this time, we'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion for adoption.
Motion to adopt. Second.
And again, caveat that there was no public comment. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 15, public hearing and final adoption of ordinance number 4, 2014. Bond ordinance amending bond ordinance number 15, 2013 of the Township of Upper in the County of Cape May, in the state of New Jersey, finally adopted December 16, 2013, in order to amend Section 1 and Section 2, which appropriates $3,748,000 and authorizes bonds or notes in the amount of $3,560,600 for various capital improvements.
Okay? So before I open it up to the public, is there any other comments from anyone?
I think we've been over this quite a bit.
Okay. Right, so at this time, is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the ordinance for 2014, which again addresses a bond which will be used for various capital projects, for capital purchases, for public works. It also includes road improvement and those kind of things. So would anyone like to address the Township Committee? This is the time to do it. Again, I'd ask that you come up and give your name and your address. Again, I'll note that there's no public comment. So at this time, we'll close the public hearing portion and entertain a motion for adoption.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Again, with no public comment. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 16, public hearing and final adoption of ordinance number 6, 2014, and ordinance amending revised general ordinance, Chapter 8, Animal Control of the Code of Upper Township.
No, we have to open for public comment. But before we do that, I want to thank you, Ed, for the work that you've done on this. I know that I've been somewhat involved with this. This has been a request by our animal control officer, based on the fact that we had really a most unusual and incredibly cold winter. This ordinance will further protect the pets that we have living within the township. It will certainly put a responsibility on pet owners to not leave their pets outside for an extended period of time in both extenuating cold situations and for that matter, the upcoming summer. And I think many of us at least hope that it's a very warm and hot summer after what we've gone through during the winter. But this is an ordinance, I think that'll go a long way to preventing cruelty to animals. So it's, I think a lot of work went into this, and I'm very pleased to offer it up for public hearing. So if anyone in the audience would like to address the Township Committee on this ordinance, now's the time to do so. And again, I would ask that you come up and state your name and your address.
Mayor, in addition to the mayor's comment, I'd like to thank Dr. Holland and his staff for their assistance in drafting this ordinance. And also, it was a tough winter. but I hope that this ordinance is going to be able to help you and increase your effectiveness out there.
I didn't see you back there with the new, beard you got sporting there, but really, Nick is Dr. Holland is a very caring individual, and so is his staff, and, he was the impetus to push us, and I'm glad he pushed us to get to this ordinance, because it's important. So, doesn't sound like we have any public comment, so again, we'll close the public portion and entertain a motion for adoption.
Motion to adopt? Second.
And again, let the record reflect that there's no public comment, so would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 17, under correspondence, Tuckahoe Volunteer Fire Company with regards to parking on Old Tuckahoe Road.
Move the resolution.
Well, this is actually a discussion item, and in fact, Ed, would you like to come up, and Chief Carter, come up and address the Township Committee?
That is a problem.
You're looking very,
Professional.
yeah,
Just for the record, Ed Carter, Chief Tuckahoe Fire Committee, live in Copper Road and Tuckahoe. The issue there is when there's sporting events at the old Tuckahoe Road fields, people park on both sides of the road, making it impassable for an emergency vehicle to get through there. Both my son have played lacrosse there, of the various sports that are played there. So I go there, and it's just, even a pickup truck at times is very hard to get through there, especially if there's a car coming one way and you're trying to go the other way. In a safety manner, that's really unacceptable in an emergency situation. I think I would probably agree the same. One of the things is if we get a call on Old Tuckahoe Road, we're going to come in from Perry Road naturally, because that's the closer end, and run the numbers. I couldn't even tell you which way they run here. And we need to get through there. If there is a house fire there during one of those events, we will need to have a loop going around that whole block, which would be very difficult at that time. So what we're asking for is that you make another parking zone from, on the south side of the Old Tuckahoe Road, at least from one end of the parking lot on the east end to the other end of the parking lot on the west end, to alleviate that.
now,
We also already have something on the books, Barb?
We have an ordinance that allows us to have temporary no parking during special events.
I don't believe that is a no parking road. We can change the ordinance, obviously. I would suggest that Paul go out and if he concurs, he report back to the committee, and we'll recommend an ordinance for your consideration that restricts parking on both sides. It's up to the committee, but you may want to get some feedback on the residents on that street, but
I've talked to a couple myself.
It's a safety issue.
They're the couple
Okay.
that I've talked to.
well, I guess the question is we need to do it in a way, if we're going to be putting, no parking stuff, we want to do it in a way that aesthetically doesn't look, too overwhelming to the homeowners that are there during normal days, you know what I'm saying? So I think having Paul go over and take a look and figure out, because we addressed the same type of thing on Harbor Road. We had the same issues with people parking there, and we couldn't get vehicles there. And we came up with a way through signage and stuff not to allow parking there, the road that runs behind the Tuckahoe in there. And I'm thinking that we might be able to incorporate the same kind of opportunity that we did there over here.
I do agree.
parking by permit, but if I'm understanding Chief Carter
No,
correctly.
not Harbor Road.
Yes,
Yes. Harbor Road
parking is allowed by permit.
I do agree with Chief Carter, it is an issue. I mean, the committee, we could look at, on the one side, where all the residential properties are, doing it, as a time restriction, essentially Saturday and Sunday, no parking, and that would allow during the weekdays where obviously there's not as many sporting events going on there.
We make it sport specific, the parking during any sporting events.
I don't think you can do that.
Yeah, but that's when they have the issues.
I know in the past, when the soccer tournament was really big, and they used to use that, we would post to one side.
Right, we post, yeah.
For the
I guess,
soccer tournament.
what I'm looking at, too, there is a Christmas tree farm there, and they generate most of their business during the weekends, on the holidays, and most of those people park on the side of the street looking at the trees. I just need to see us.
Right, but if you did it on one side, because on the field side, you can get off, I mean, if they choose to, they can get off the road, if they choose to, they can get off the road, a good portion of the vehicle off the road. But I think it'd be pretty hard to enforce both sides of the road. Even though, I agree with Chief Carter from his letter, there is ample parking in both of the two lots that we have there. They just choose not to walk those extra steps.
Well, we need the input from the organizers of these events and have their participation, because it has come up in past rec board meetings. I don't know if it's come up in yours, but to get these coaches and these organizers to be able to get the people off the roadway and into the parking areas, because what it comes down to, it's people's behavior. They don't want to walk, and we have to force them to start walking from those parking lots.
I think like making more parking on the residential side is the way to go. As someone that's involved with the sports program, even the Commanders, we try to move them out of there, but once the game starts, we're involved in our game.
Exactly.
And by the time the game's over, we've got 40, 50 cars parked down the street.
So Ed, if we were to devise a plan where there would be no parking on one side, well, I mean, it almost sounds like it might be easier just to do it all the time. Because I don't know how you can pick and choose, because we all know exactly what day someone's gonna be there with an activity.
You can probably do it all the time. Because they do have parks there any other time, so it wouldn't be an issue
Right.
as far as enforcement. From what I mean, I work here too, I work over there, I was over there today, not a single car there.
But we do have sports programs in the afternoons, correct?
Right.
So,
And they, for the most part, when they're there for practice, it's a drop off where they stay, they either park in the parking lot or they park on the side of the road by the fence and do get off the road.
And it's not the sheer number of vehicles.
Right.
Okay,
So during the games, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with how it works, there's 2 lacrosse games going on all day long. But there's 6 teams here. The way they play, there's 6 teams here all the time. That's a lot of cars. And it's just, they all want to be as close to that field as they can be. Yeah, and we use the 2 ends that are down by John Culver's house, down on the east end. So they all want to be down on those fields, and they park as close as they can. They don't want to walk across the field from the other park.
Do we have ample parking when all 6 teams are there?
Most of the time, yes. The last game that was there, it was tight. I got there, I had the last game of the day, and it was pretty tight there. So I'm not sure that there always is anymore. Before I would have said yes, but now I'm not 100% sure.
Where would the cars go if there isn't parking in the lot?
Well, that's why I would recommend maybe we start by doing it on one side of the road and see if that helps alleviate most of the issues.
There's the wooded side of the road, even past the fields on the west side, that they couldn't park down, nobody parks there either.
is that shoulder wide enough?
I think if they park like they do along the fence line, they can get off the road enough to get vehicles through, yes.
But we could also probably have signage, no blocking roadway, no parking on one side and no blocking roadway.
I know some of the homeowners even there have put stakes in their yards to keep people off their yards because they just don't care. People don't care about where they park.
Because there are statutes for blocking a right-of-way.
I mean, listen, the issue here is a public safety issue. I mean, not only, do we have to worry about it in the event of a fire, we also have to worry about it in the event of an emergency, EMT gets a call or something. So, the last thing we need to do is say, we can't get the vehicles by, and can somebody come out and move the car? I mean, they shouldn't be there in the first place. So, usually the way we should proceed with this is, we'll have to have Dan draw up, the changes and revision that we need to make to the ordinance, and then we have to go through the process where the ordinance will be introduced, and what you've heard tonight, it'll be a 30-day, comment period, and then we'll have a public hearing. So it's not something we can just do tomorrow, but we certainly can move forward with it, based on, your comments and Paul's recommendations, so.
As a temporary fix, is there any way we could have orange cones stand there and put them down the entire length?
Well, the Township Committee can, under our existing ordinance, declare a temporary emergency and no parking zone. So you could pass a resolution and declare no parking during sporting events, and put up ropes and signs, and just like we do at Amanda's Field, frankly, during the fireworks.
I think we should, because the 29th day, if there's a problem, it's not fast enough, so.
But, really, I think we have one home meeting left this, well, I say that, my board has one home meeting left, that's Saturday night. I don't know if there's any others, so I wasn't really looking, and you probably weren't going to be able to do something for this week, but I'm looking in the future to have it set, maybe have it set before the next season starts, so it's there on the books and ready to go before it happens.
Under our rules, doesn't the mayor have the ability to, like the chief of police, to...
The state police, we get a letter from the state police saying that it is a hazard and no parking areas are set up. Now with state police, it's Route 50, so it's a state highway, and they kind of implement that. But for us, it would be the township. It's a township road.
You would need a resolution, and then,
Resolution,
and then Public Works would have to go out and sign it.
Right,
And
so
put the sign.
let's do one thing at a time. Let's do a resolution saying it's an emergency situation and we can get some kind of signage up for the time being, right? Is that what we just said?
Yes.
So would someone like to make that motion?
I am, for the resolution.
Second.
Okay, so would you call the roll?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansari?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
And now, Dan, you need some kind of motion to move forward for the
I need
revision of the ordinance?
direction, and it could be in form of a motion. I'm assuming from the sense of the discussion that we're talking about restricting parking on the residential side of the street. I'll work with Paul in terms of the description, that'll be in the ordinance.
I'll work with the chief on, working out the exact limits of that area.
And we bring it back for your consideration and introduction and public hearing.
So do you need a motion to start the process?
I would like, once I have street residential,
So I'll make that motion.
Jess, what you want to start?
Any discussion? Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansari?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Thank you, Edward.
Item
Right.
number...
Go ahead.
Item number 18, under new business, bid opening results for the 2013 or newer 10-foot bed dump truck.
Barbara?
We went out to bid for the dump truck that Public Works requested. We had one bidder for just under our estimate, $149,949. As you might recall, a few months back, we went out to bid for this same dump truck, and we rejected the bids because because they were over the estimate. In this case, they're just under the estimate, and I would recommend awarding to Robert Hoover and Sons, which was our bidder.
This is the truck with the stainless steel body,
This is
with the stainless steel body.
correct.
So we need a motion? Motion approved?
To,
Yes, to accept the bid.
Yep.
And there'll be a resolution on the next meeting.
So are you making that motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Is this included in the bond, or is this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Because we bid was the first time, and then the bids were done wrong.
It was higher than what the estimate was.
Right.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansari?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 19, Upper Township Construction Official request to increase permit fees. This is unfinished business.
I asked Barbara to put together some of the comparable expenses from some of the other towns. Subsequent to that, I had an opportunity to have some informal conversations with Mayor John Murphy from Dennis Township, with the idea, is there a possibility of doing some kind of shared services in an effort to try and, keep our existing program process in place. And he certainly said that he would like to sit down and discuss that opportunity. And, I'm not sure how the committee feels at this point about raising fees. But, and we did receive some correspondence via email, which I think was forwarded to all of you as well. But, personally, before, I think we take a stab at this, I'd like to have an opportunity, maybe with Mr. Coggins from Revenue and Finance, or someone to discuss, what opportunities might be there, and bring it back at a later date. I'm not sure, if the timing works for the next meeting, but certainly within the next month for reconsideration. So, at this point, I would say before we make any, rash decisions on looking at other opportunities, I'd like to see what options are available through shared services first.
So you want time to talk about Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
That's fine.
While we are on the subject of fees, this might be a good opportunity for us to look at all of the fees across the board that the township has, to find out if any of them are in need of revision. I know there were some questions about the fees for the zoning and planning. We talked about that. We talked about perhaps looking at an increase there. We may want to look at some of the other fees that the township has, various things.
We have not reviewed generally fees for a number of years. We do have mobile home park fees. I think that we should do canvassing to see what other towns do. I think we're considerably below them. And there are a number of other fees. We have to change the ordinance with respect to revisions to the tax map. So it may not be a bad idea to ask Barb's office and myself to maybe make a proposal based upon updating our fees. That does dovetail into your item number 20, because you did get a recommendation to your opinion, but the zoning and planning fees are significantly lower than any other municipality in probably Cape Ann County, and that they should probably be addressed.
I think the new one proposed brings that more to a higher average than, where we were before.
It makes you on par with most mainland communities. To be very frank with you, the barrier islands traditionally have much higher application and escrow fees. Their volume is higher. They're not charging the fees to voters. They're charging the fees to resort development. So there's a different clientele there than the mainland communities. But we're still significantly below in what we charge in our application and escrow for the...
We're in line with Mays Landing, Dennis Township, Middle Township.
The proposed fees.
Yeah, right.
Yes, we're not in line with anybody right now.
I'm looking at the proposed, not what was there. That was substantially low. I know when we looked at this, we brought the fees up to where it would help carry the board's cost on the fee simple procedure, and that's where they should be, without being a total detriment to the community.
That's what those fees are designed to do, to cover the board's costs. And again, somewhat similar to the situation with construction code. There might be times in slow economic times that you don't want to cover the cost because you want to provide service. But you heard from the development community, they actually asked you to raise the fees rather than cut the services.
Yeah, and again, we have to watch. If we make it too drastic of a change, we're going to have a major enforcement issue on our hands with people. They're going to be out putting sheds in, pools in. I've seen additions go on, without permits, and then we're going to spend time in enforcing more so than just doing what we should be doing.
Not only that, you're going to have people probably discouraged from coming to township and businesses.
Well, that's why I said, and they'll do it without the permits.
So, raising fees is so all good, that, we're behind other municipalities. To use the fees, they have to be used to offset the cost of going to the township, not to benefit.
I guess for our purposes, we would need direction. Would you rather see a proposed ordinance ready for adoption if you see fit, or would you rather see an analysis of all the fees first before we incorporate it into a proposed ordinance.
I think one of the opportunity would look at it all at once, see a complete analysis.
Well, and what I was thinking about doing was just as we've done with budget in the past and have several workshops, it might make sense to have one workshop meeting to discuss the fees, and work with those that will be affected by the fees. So I'd like to see a list put together and with some comparables, like we've done,
We already have them for zoning, planning, and code enforcement, so we'll look at the other fees in the ordinance, and we'll give you those, and then you'll have a
Right,
package.
so we have a package, and then we advertise and say, those of you that have interest in this, we'll have a workshop, half an hour before our regular scheduled meeting, and that way we can have some input, if there is input available from the public that could, help us to make a decision. But I also want to pursue this other opportunity, because we have had comments to say that, that they don't want to see the services leave the township hall, and so we can find ways to, meet some of the cost overrun that we have and still accomplish the services that we provide. It would probably make sense to move forward with it. So,
Dan, my question is, right now we're still working on the old fees for planning and zoning. So we're going to continue to run it negative the longer this gets put off.
If you want to move forward on that, we can move forward on that.
I think we should move forward on the fees for the planning and zoning, because
If that's a no-brainer and everybody agrees with the recommendation, we can get that as an introduction at the next meeting.
We did a lot of research on it, and I think the fees are right run where they should be. But again, the longer we wait, we're going to get a continued deficit.
Now, we're targeting all fees, right?
Yeah, well, I think in this case, it might make sense to do two ordinances. One, to address the immediate need, because we actually did have a workshop. I mean, per se, we had a number of
That's
meetings.
already been distilled, I understand.
Right.
We can do that. I can have for the next agenda.
Okay. So, I guess we'll continue with this, as a discussion item, moving forward. I guess what I'd like to do is, you and I will work whether we want to put it as unfinished business for the next agenda or postpone it to the meeting after that. Because I just don't have the time or, the availability between myself, my schedule and Mayor Murphy's schedule to get together in the next 2 weeks.
On the construction, do we need a motion for Dan to proceed with the ordinance for?
No, we have the recommendation. We'll move forward. The ordinance, when it gets introduced, will be your formal action.
Yeah, and with the construction.
I mean, no one has any objection to the recommendation, I assume.
With the construction, just something for everybody to, really think about. It's no longer just the permit cost for the person doing the work and for the home. It's now with the color fees being added into it. The average house in town, you could probably back me up on this, is a new home between $5,000 and $6,000 for color. And what's the average permit price right now?
Because we're fit, Janet, would you come up and address the township committee, because this is being videoed and I don't want
false numbers.
Right.
Yep. Good, yeah.
Janet Carlson, Warren. Every permit is different. There's a minimum under each of the subcodes. But as you said, for the COA fees on a new home on vacant land, the fees could be anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 just on that portion alone, which most people don't budget when they're planning their homes.
And they can't get their CO until that's paid, correct?
Correct. And that's not, I
think
mean,
we say-
our hands are tied.
Would you think it'd be safe to say that right now with a new home, the COA fees and permits is between $8,000 and $10,000?
Sure, the fees for a new home, well, the fee for the new home that was utilized in the comparison chart you have was $3,125 for the permit. Would have been another $5,000 to $6,000.
Yeah, and the COA permit, the fee also gets charged for all the additional permits, right?
I'm sorry?
Does the COA come into play if somebody's putting a garage up or a
Yes.
For
sunport?
any change in volume or footprint. It could be for a swimming pool, it could be for a deck, it could be for a garage, it could be for a second story. Any volume or footprint change, it kicks in.
That's what I thought, so it's, everything we do with the permit process as far as raising the fees. It definitely affects everyone.
Well,
We have to do it to cover what we have to cover, but if we're in excess with it, we're going to have a major enforcement issue, because people are going to go and work without permits.
We find people now, just while Ed is riding around, he'll come back to the office and say, I saw something I didn't inspect. Did they pull a permit? We go back into that, yes.
So we don't want to make it so cost prohibitive that people want to go and just do the work. Then we also want it on a life safety issue.
Right. And since you called me up here, may I ask about a quote that was in the newspaper after last meeting? One of the options you said tonight was shared services. In the newspaper, it said that there was an interest in possibly the state taking over the construction office. Is that on the table?
That has been proposed by one of the committee members. Before we even got to that, I'm looking at the potential for the shared services and looking at the whole, I'm not even saying we're going to go with that, because, I've always said flat out that, we're not going to get involved with any shared services that is an expense to the township. It's either a benefit to the township or we make money. And we have both of those scenarios in shared services that we have now. So it's either going to be savings for the township or we make money on it. So it's worthwhile for us to do it. So nothing is definite, nothing is carved in stone, and nothing, it's just exploring opportunities.
So that is one of the options.
I'd say that's more of an option than, well, personally, it's more of an option than the other one, for me, anyway.
Is that cost saving?
Well, I don't know that, that's what I'm saying. I can't pull a number out of it, I don't know, what
And
what
we
the
really
opportunity
shouldn't
is.
negotiate, we haven't even had any meetings with the towns yet, so we really shouldn't be negotiating in public contract terms or provisions.
I just wondered.
Obviously, we would hopefully get some economies by doing it if we were in a slow period and we have more manpower.
Shared services.
I thought
Which one are you talking about?
The BCA can take
Ah.
over.
If the BCA makes sense, it saves money, that'd be an option, yes.
But I mean, has that monetary end of that been looked into?
No, not at this point. We're very early on in that. And somebody's also brought up the thought that there are private contractors available who also do this
Third-party
type of...
inspectors?
Pardon?
Third-party inspectors?
Yeah. And I don't know, I don't know anything about it. It's part of the whole research game.
Well, I see a lot of head shaking no out there, so. I know we're going to be in the workshop meeting.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Would anyone else like to address the township committee this time? Well, wait a minute, we're not even at that point, let's call Janet up. Let's just finish the agenda and then we'll get to that.
I think we kind of merged 19 and 20, so
We need the
You don't want to
payment of the bills.
Well, we just gave that to Dan to draw the ordinance together.
Based on the recommended fees.
Right.
yes.
All right, so, would someone like to make a motion to pay the bills?
Motion to pay the bills.
We have to read the statement. I hereby move that all claims, go ahead.
Claims submitted for payment at this meeting be approved and then incorporated in the full minutes of this meeting.
Hobie seconded it. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
So there are a number of reports from the municipal departments, construction code, clerk's office, EMS, animal control, tax assessor, tax collector, finance office, and the Green Team, March 11, 2014 minutes from the meeting. They will be available at the township clerk's office tomorrow if you'd like to view them. But in the meantime, I'll make a motion to accept those municipal department reports.
Second.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
So at this time, one last time, we'll ask the public, this is the open portion of the meeting where you can address the township committee on any issues that you have or any suggestions that you might want to offer to us. Again, we'd ask that you come up, you can state your name and your address and any comment or suggestion that you might have or question. And everybody's content to stay in their chairs tonight, so. Well, again, we appreciate you all coming out this evening. It's always good for us to see some faces out there that we haven't seen and have an opportunity to interact with you that have come to observe the meeting of the committee. So with that, I'll close the public portion and entertain a motion to go into executive session, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Coggins to read a statement.
I hereby move that the resolution be incorporated into the minutes authorizing the Township Committee to enter into an executive session for the following matters pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act. Contract negotiation for Computer House, contract negotiation for shared services with Cape May County for heavy equipment fleet maintenance, contract negotiation for CASA payroll services, litigation under Township versus Sansone and Yank. Personnel. I also included in my motion the estimated time and circumstances under which the discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public as follows. It is anticipated that the matters discussed in closed session may be disclosed to the public upon the determination of the Township Committee that the public interest will no longer be served by such confidentiality. With respect to employment and personnel matters, such discussions will be made public if and when formal action is taken or when individuals involved consent that it can be made public. With respect to contract negotiations, such matters will be made public when negotiations have ceased and there is no longer a reason for confidentiality. With respect to litigation matters, such discussions will be made public when litigation is complete and the applicable appeal period has expired.
Would you call the roll, please?
You need a second?
I'll second. Go ahead.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah? Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion is
Thank you all again. Have a great evening.